Remember back in the day when you wanted to play a game, all you had to do was pop in the disc and you're pretty much ready to go. But these days you basically have to be connected to the internet 24/7 as a gamer, and it's becoming quite the bother.
Almost every AAA game released at the minute needs you to be connected to the internet at least for a time. Between day one patches, DRM and multiplayer features, there's always something that requires a connection. Most of the time it doesn't interfere all that much, but when it does, Christ can it be a pain in the ass. Look at Diablo 3. It was a much anticipated release that featured a single player mode and co-op, but on release the servers were overloaded by excited players and they just could not log in to play the game. Even the single player was inaccessible to many players who faced the now infamous Error 37. It's that kind of thing that still makes always online gaming a pain in the ass for some people.
And then of course there was the infamous SimCity 2013. That was another game where players were forced to be always online, and the resulting shitstorm was something special. SimCity required a persistent online connection, but on release the servers were overloaded and they were actually shut down. This meant no one in North America could play the game, and they were unable to do so for a couple of days. And this was at the time that the game came out. The game released and you couldn't play it. Bollocks. You like that?
It's like, we need something else. Bollocks.
This led EA to actually delaying the game's release in some areas of the world while they desperately tried to increase the server capacity and meet player demand. The incident was so bad, news organisations like the BBC reported on it, and a petition was sent to the White House asking for legislation to make games work offline without the need for servers.
But to make all this worse, it was soon discovered that, plot twist, the game could be played offline with no issues whatsoever. And EA's argument that the game needed an internet connection just to function was actually complete horseshit. A modder discovered that removing a single line of code from the game files enabled the game to be played offline. For Honor's single player was inaccessible unless you had access to the internet. And that's really the big problem with Always Online. If it doesn't really need an internet connection, it shouldn't need an internet connection.
They said it needed an internet connection to function, but then they didn't. And it was complete horseshit. Is that worse than cat shit or dog shit, Mike? I mean, that is you're introducing a third type of shit into this equation. And like we've already deduced that like cat shit's worse than dog shit, but horse shit.
Horse shit, we can all agree, is a lot bigger, right? That's the thing. So
well, that was my point about the dog shit, but nobody bought that.
You know, when they're saying, oh, you can't be done, you can't play this game online, it's not possible. We need a server to do something in the game, otherwise it doesn't work. And then a few days later, when there's a shitstorm about it, then they say, oh, suddenly, yeah, it can go.
It does work.
You
delete one line of code and it works. Like,
yeah, it's just, that's one of the worst things about this, is when they say something is impossible.
Feeding is bullshit. Yeah. A feeding is bullshit.
The biggest example of this was, I remember it was a YouTuber, I think it was like Angry Joe or whatever, and he was asking Major Nelson about the new Xbox One when they announced it, which had this DRM inbuilt into it, right? So every game would have to be online and you couldn't swap your games with your mates and all that. So Joe asks him, why can't you just, like, you know, everybody's upset about this, why can't you just undo it? Major Nelson, the really smiley, friendly Major Nelson, gets pretty upset with Joe, and then a few days later, what do you know it, Microsoft backtracks completely and, oh, you know, the online thing is just bollocks and you don't need to be always online with the Xbox One. But the companies aren't afraid to just assert something as fact and say it can't be done, and then just change their minds completely when there's too much controversy.
They're just feeding us bullshit, and that's like the whole situation around the Xbox One. There was so much backlash, and everybody was tearing them up, and they decided for like PR reasons, for just a damage limitation, that they had to backtrack. They had to give the gamers what they want, and they're still seeing the repercussions of it to this day.
So problems can arise on their end. So the servers can be overloaded quite easily. You know, that's why they run, part of the reason probably why they run betas on so many games the last couple of years, just to warm the servers up and test the waters for popularity and things like that. But also, of course, on our end, I mean, the internet is still, when you take a step back and look at it, pretty new.
I mean, I live in the UK. It's not a third world country. The infrastructure should be pretty good. But when I switched internet providers a few months ago, like the end of last year, I was offline for a whole month when they transitioned. That was such a ball ache. I couldn't play. I just bought Battlefield 1 and I was like, at least I can play it single player, right? No, wrong. I couldn't play it single player. Why? Why is that, people? I don't know. So why do publishers like to enforce always online? Well, first and foremost, it's the most efficient form of DRM, and they love DRM because they hate piracy. As always, publishers go out of their way to implement anti-piracy measures meant to stop the illegal sharing or modification of games. But always online means that those of us with a genuine copy have to constantly have our games verified by a server. Any detection of modifications to the game's files will cut off access to the game. In other words, those of us who don't pirate the games are the ones left paying the price.
Publishers like Ubisoft also love to make their games online focused these days so they can, yes, fight piracy, but also sell more stuff to us in the form of microtransactions. And multiplayer online gaming just keeps people playing games for longer, and it encourages people to get their friends on board to play the game as well, meaning more sales of the actual game, creating a longer tail in terms of sales. And if more people are playing and playing for longer, that of course means more opportunity to sell even more microtransactions. In short, there's lots of reasons why it's great for publishers to go always online with their games, but not so many reasons why it's great for us as gamers.
We can see where they're coming from, piracy and that, but the method that they use, where they feed us bullshit and try to get us to swallow it. And a couple of days later, oh, by the way, that bullshit I fed you,
you didn't
have to eat it. It gives a bad perception of the industry, and that's kind of what's like rotten about this whole thing for me.
For me, with always online, it just hasn't reached the point that it needs to be at yet. I think they implement it so badly. If you're disconnected on some games, that's it. You're out. There's got to be compromise on their part. They've got to let us continue to play single player games offline if we want to. Even to something like The Division, right? Let us be connected to that world. You can play that game solo completely. It's an online world. You're part of an online experience. Surely you can let us experience that game in some way offline, just in case there's a drop in connection or something like that. Let's store our data locally and then let us re-upload that data once the connection is kind of re-established.
Kind of like what No Man's Sky does.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to continue this defense of No Man's Sky any further than I have to. No Man's Sky does that. You can play the game offline, and then it stores the data, and then once you connect again, it uploads. Like, why can't The Division do that?
Yeah,
why can't other games do that? I think in summary, No Man's Sky is a shining beacon to the whole of the gaming industry.
It's true that always online is quickly becoming a big part of everyday life. It's inescapable. Your phone is always connected through data or Wi-Fi. We now live in a world where the entire breadth of human knowledge is available on your phone at all times. Devices like the Amazon Echo can't function without a connection, and more people are installing them in their homes because they just make life a bit easier, and it's made possible by being always online. However, always online gaming isn't in a healthy state yet. It's just not good for gamers in its current form. At the moment, it's just another barrier between you and your games. If you've bought a game, you should be allowed to play it, connection or not.
Why don't you guys let us know what your experiences are with being always online down in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, hit subscribe if you're new around here. Check out more of our content here, and if you want to help us continue fight the good fight, you can now support us on Patreon. Until next time, bye for now.